Thank you, Dr. Fraser. My name is Kristine Kuhn. I'm the chief of the Division of Rheumatology here. It is my privilege and pleasure to introduce Dr. Kristine Kuhn, the Scoville Endowed Chair and head of the Division of Rheumatology, Associate Professor of Medicine and of Immunology and Microbiology at the University of Colorado. Christy also wears many different hats. She serves as the chair of the American College of Rheumatology Committee on Research and sits on the executive committee of the Spondyloarthritis Research and Treatment Network. Christy received her MD PhD in immunology, as you've heard, at University of Colorado. She then came to St. Louis, where she completed her internal medicine residency and chief residency and rheumatology fellowship at Barnes-Jewish Hospital and Washington University. In 2013, much to our chagrin, Christine left us and returned to University of Colorado to establish her independence and to lead an NIH-funded research program focusing on proving that specific micromucosal interaction initiates systemic inflammation and the subsequent development of spondyloarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis. Her groundbreaking research findings were published last year in Science Translational Medicine, and this publication to date has garnered an altmetric score of 987 as of last night, picked up by 92 news outlets, including NPR, Wait, Don't Tell Me, and then has been tweeted 536 times. If her research did not keep Christy busy enough, she decided last year to take up another challenge by becoming the division director of rheumatology at Colorado. Christy is here today to tell us how she finds a passion and, what's important, the time to juggle all these responsibilities. So please welcome my good friend and colleague, Dr. Kristine Kuhn. Christine, take it away.
Thank you, Christine. That was very sweet of you to say all of those kind remarks about me. I'm going to quickly share my screen here. And as I do so, what I'm going to say is that I was asked today, hopefully everybody can see this in the right format, but what I was asked today is to talk about leadership. And I will say I have a lot of imposter syndrome thinking about and talking about this because I by no means am an expert or scholar in leadership development or on the topics of finding your purpose and leading with passion. But I am an expert on my own journey. And so that's what I'm going to share with you today is I'm going to weave some of these concepts into my own journey and hope that you can glean something useful for your own journey from what I present. And so the journey really starts with, why do you want to be a blank? I think a lot of us have heard this question when we were applying to medical school. Why do you want to be a doctor? I went through this question when interviewing, why do you want to be a division head? And to be able to really answer this question, I think we have to start with your purpose. What is your why? Why do you want to be? And I think some of that starts to begin with who you are. And who are you at your core? What makes you you and distinctive from others? What is the identity that you exude? The strengths and passions you bring to the table, no matter where you're seated. And none of this has to be aspirational. It's really who you are and who you can't help being. And why you want to go through this exercise and identify your purpose is because when you can align your purpose with what you do as far as your job, you're going to have better performance and satisfaction. You'll have a lot better wellness or well-being. And when you have a sense of who you are, things start to flow naturally. You will find that the tasks you are doing are a lot more effortless. And understanding what motivates you has shown to dramatically increase the ability to achieve big goals. And so because I really wanted to come into this position as a division head, I really had to understand, what is my purpose in this? And does that purpose of why I want to be division head align with what the University of Colorado, in this case, had in mind for their division head. Because if those aligned, I was going to be able to do a better job and things would go a lot more smoothly for me than if I was trying to fight a current in which my purpose and that of the organization were not aligned. So how to find your purpose? What are the things, the exercises to go through so that you can really narrow down and understand your why? And this is a lot of reflection of who you are and your past experiences. What is your life story? And what are the common threads and major themes of that life story? When you were a child, what were the things you wanted to do and be before the world told you what you should and shouldn't like or should and shouldn't do? And even now today, what is it that you enjoy doing that helps you continue to move along? But not only just the positive things, but think about how the challenges have shaped you. And also be really honest. I think one of the important things is to talk with trusted friends or colleagues or a partner about, does this sound like me? For example, for me to say to myself, oh, I'm laid back. I may wish I were laid back, but that is not me. I am high energy and I'm intense. And that's what I bring to a table. And so that's just who I am. And my spouse, Enrique, would look at me and be like, give me the squinty eye and be like, are you sure? Because I think you're fit in here. So really think about it and be honest with yourself. And so kind of going through this exercise of figuring out who you are to then find your purpose, I'm going to go through my story a little bit. And this is one of my favorite pictures. That's not even of me. It's actually of my grandfather and my aunt standing in our wheat field. And that's because I'm from Western Kansas. Again, I can't help being this person. It's what I was born into. And so, but this really forms part of my identity and who I am. I grew up on a farm where every summer, late June, early July, it was harvest time. And so that's why this picture resonates with me, is it brings me back to that harvest time in Western Kansas when I was growing up. And I would spend my entire day sitting on the wheat truck, making sure when the combine came in, that it was filling the truck with the wheat and it wasn't spewing out everywhere else. Everybody had a job. My grandfather always drove the combine. My dad drove the wheat truck. I helped in the truck. My mother was always making sure, and she was the runner. If anybody needed anything, she was running back and forth here and there. And I had cousins and aunts and uncles who all had their jobs as well. And we learned this teamwork, that everybody had their part in the harvest. And if one of us wasn't able to do our part, we had to all pitch in and figure out how are we going to compensate and make up for that other person's absence. So I really learned how to work together as a team for a common goal. The other thing that really brought us all together is that every evening we would sit in the field, usually in the back of a truck, and have dinner. And so, nostalgic a little bit, but these wonderful, amazing, clear blue Kansas evenings with this amazing sunset and having like fried chicken and watermelon and iced tea sitting on the back of the pickup truck. But that brought together not only just this teamwork and collaboration, but this community that I grew up in. And so I really came away with these values of hard work, honesty, teamwork. Now, education. Why does this come up about me growing up on a farm in Western Kansas? Well, one of the threads throughout my entire family of value has been education. And this started with my great-grandfather, who was this farming businessman, highly well-respected in the community. But he had 15 kids because you needed that many to work on the farm. But no matter if you were male or female, you went to school. And you didn't just stop with high school. You went to school through college and even postgraduate training, if that's what you desired, because he saw the value in the education, no matter who you were. And my great-grandfather was going to make sure that that was going to be afforded to you and the opportunities there if you desired them. And that came through with my grandfather and then with my mother, and that thread is woven throughout our family. Also, growing up back in Western Kansas, where I was from, I'm an only child and I was on a farm. So I spent a lot of time alone, which meant I learned to explore. I would explore the fields around me and I would dream, a lot of daydreaming and a lot of imaginary friends. But it really does form a lot of who I am now. And as part of loving to explore, I love research, I love education and knowledge, but I also like to dream about what could be. How do we do this better? How do we go higher? And that's really formed from this upbringing. And then my training after that probably influenced why I became a physician scientist. I love to be active, always have been a high energy person. Again, something I just can't help be. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just who I am. And so I love being outside. I love sports and exercise, and I have a lot of energy. As I said, part of who I am is I'm a physician scientist. That has become very ingrained in my identity. And the last thing here, thinking about the challenges I've faced, is that I've often been the only woman in the room. And I can remember when I was looking at residencies and I was applying for physician scientist training pathway. So graduating MD PhDs, going into residency, could do this special pathway. And at one of my interviews, I was one of 20 applicants that day. And I was the only woman in the room out of all of the applicants and even the people presenting and talking to us that day. Even a few weeks ago, I was going into a collaborative meeting with regards to our research, and I was, again, the only woman in the room. And that has formed a lot of who I am and some of my central beliefs, because I don't like being the only one in the room, and I don't want anybody else to feel being the only in the room. And so that forms part of my central identity and my purpose. So thinking through all of these things that have really influenced who I am and my why, one of the exercises that's often recommended, and this is a list from Brene Brown, is to identify what are your values. So thinking about your identity, what are the core values that are part of your identity? And so shown here, the exercise is to really look at these values and identify those that resonate with you. And so that's really in all of the highlight are the things that resonated with me. And again, part of my identity, this adventure, community, risk-taking, travel, honesty, perseverance, vision, teamwork. All of these things are part of my core identity and values. The task then is to take those core identities and values and start to identify what are the central themes of all of these. And can you really narrow it down to 3 to 5 values? And those are the ones in green for me. I really value authenticity, people being honest with who they are, and not only being honest to themselves, but being honest to others. I value knowledge. This was just ingrained into me ever since I was born, as was teamwork. And then the vision, just the way I've grown up, not only just being in Western Kansas on the farm, but then also training as a physician scientist. I have really embraced having vision and dreaming big. So you go through these exercises and you say, okay, this is who I am. These are my values. Let's find your purpose. And so the first thing in finding your purpose is to start to say, what is your life's purpose? What is your mission in life? What is it you believe? What is your calling? And for me, when I start to think about all of these things and how they weave together, for me, it really becomes that I want to propel the success of the next generation by showing them how to dream big and persevere. This is because I love to dream, because I love teamwork, because I love honesty, but I also have a lot of energy, and I don't want anybody to feel like the only in the room. And so this is kind of fits into my mission in life. And this applies to not just me at work, but this applies to me even in mothering my children. I want them to be successful, and I'm going to show them how to dream big and persevere in their lives. So then next, think about your core strengths. When you're at your best, how do you show up? What do you show up with? And for me, For me, that is enthusiasm, optimism, and innovation. Now, I will say, I am not always enthusiastic. There are days where I'm exhausted and I'm tired and I'm dragging my feet. But when I'm at my best, I am going to be the cheerleader in the room, really encouraging the people there that we can do this. And part of that is optimism, right? I am optimistic. Despite the setbacks, I think at the end of the day, we're going to be successful. The plan might change, and that's okay. But somehow we're going to walk out and be able to claim a success. And innovative. Probably a character flaw of mine is that I'm a problem solver. And a lot of times that can be really great because I'm going to think about ways to solve the problem. Now, knowing that's a strength, I also understand how that can be a weakness, and I have to be self-aware of that. So how do I combine these into my professional vision? What is the expression of the purpose and core strengths in your professional life? What's your elevator pitch? And so when I was asked, why do I want to be a division head? I said, it's because my purpose as a division head will be to build an integrated rheumatology program based on cutting-edge research that provides the best possible care and educates learners from different backgrounds. And throughout this vision, I had ideas of propelling the success of the next generation. I had my innovation and dreaming big because I want to see how we can integrate research and clinical care better and more and facilitate exciting research ideas that then would give us an ability to care for patients better. And so it really brings in a lot of my core strengths and a lot of my life purpose into this professional vision. And fortunately, that aligned very well with the University of Colorado's vision for the program. So now that I had identified this will be my purpose, how do I put this into action? And that comes down to passion, leading with passion. And I love this quote by Steve Jobs, mostly because it just resonates with me. And it's that the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do so. And we're going to talk a little bit more about passion, but you really have to be passionate and think that you are going to be able to change things, because if you come in with that passion and that dedication, you're going to be successful. And so what is passion? How do we define that in the leadership sense? Well, passion is the energy that keeps us motivated and continuously engaged. It maintains your focus and that forward momentum. It's the drive behind you. It also is going to help you grow and improve, because you're not going to just settle for an outcome. You're going to want to grow and improve that outcome. And again, that forward momentum and that focus. What does it take to be a passionate leader? What are the qualities one has? And I'll go through several, there's 10 qualities here that were listed. And I'll go through some of these qualities. The first is confidence. I'm not talking about confidence that you get when you do like the Superman pose before you go into a meeting, or this inflated self-view. I'm talking about confidence in, I am good enough, I can do this, and whatever deficiency I have the skills and capabilities to grow, to learn, and master. I think where confidence really struck me the most was when I first looked at becoming a division head. I knew I had wanted this step in my career at some point. I just didn't think it was the time quite yet. A year ago when the announcement came at Colorado, and then I was asked by a couple other places, and other people were coming to me thinking I was ready, but I wasn't sure I was ready. And I looked at the job descriptions and I'm like, well, darn, I don't meet all of the qualifications required here. You know, they have always this list of several required qualifications. And I felt, well, yes, I've had some national leadership and I know how to run a research program. And I am a clinician, but I've never been a clinic director. And I don't really understand fully how the flow of funds between the hospital and the university occur. I also thought to myself, yes, even though I've had a very successful research program, I've never really been the PI of a T32 or the PI of a P grant. So I was starting to talk myself down as if I didn't have the abilities to do this. And then I had heard a quote somewhere, and I wish I could remember this source, but I had heard that men are more likely to apply for a job when they only meet a couple of the required qualifications. But women wait to apply for a job until they meet 100% of the qualifications, at which time they are essentially deemed overqualified for the position. And so I asked myself, if I were a man, would I be applying? And the answer was yes, I would totally apply for this job. And so that was the confidence I needed to go ahead and apply and see if it happened. The other confidence I had is I knew that even though this were a goal, if I failed, I was going to learn a lot through the process to better be qualified in the future and try again. So vulnerability. I think vulnerability, emotional intelligence, all kind of are integrated. And vulnerability means that you're going to be open and honest with yourself, as well as open and honest with your team. And you are going to tell them, hey, I don't understand this funds flow between the hospital and the university. I need to learn more. And being willing to ask whether the people on your team, and I've learned a lot from our clinic director in the last year, or even going outside of your team and asking other people. And I have overcome every fear I had to ask questions. Even if I think this is really ridiculous that I'm asking this question, I'm still asking it because I need to learn. And I don't mind being vulnerable and showing that I don't know, but I want to learn. It's also some emotional intelligence and understanding my limitations and being able to find ways to accommodate those limitations. It's also emotional intelligence in being able to read my team and understand, what does my team need? One of the things that happened quickly as I came on as division head was a wellness survey had been released. And the data for my division wasn't good. And so it made me think a little bit more about how I was interacting with my team and talking to them and really listening. What are the clues that I'm getting? What is it this person is needing to improve their wellness and overall happiness in their position? And then vision. And I'll talk more about this vision, but you really have to come into it with a vision. What do you want to do? What are your goals? What's the blue sky for you? And as you do that vision and your emotional intelligence and trying to learn, you value others. And not only do you value others, but you share your passion, you share your vision with the others. And maybe you reiterate it because you find that the path that you want to go along isn't shared by everyone. But if you make a slight detour, you're going to get a lot of people on board. And so through that, you have to do a lot of active listening to understand not only what do others value and have passion around, how can they share your passion, but then how can you work together on that common vision? Positivity. Again, it can be a struggle depending on the day, right? But at the end of the day, having that optimistic outlook that regardless of the path, regardless of the challenges and setbacks, you ultimately are going to get there and be able to find success. And then foundational to all of this is you yourself have to have a belief in the mission. That mission has to align with your purpose, because if you don't have that, the rest of this cannot stand. And also, if you have that mission and purpose aligned, you're going to have that commitment to success. Again, without that commitment and the ability to say that I'm going to drive this forward, it's all going to fall apart. If your team sees your belief, sees your commitment, sees your passion, it's going to help facilitate getting your tasks, your goals, your vision accomplished. So how to become a more passionate leader? Well, according to the Fast Company Executive Board, they have a top 10 list. And the first thing is to share your vision. And so when I came into the position as division head, I was told I needed to do a strategic plan and get it done. And I came up with 4 domains shown here. This is from our strategic planning events. And I say events because it was an iterative process. And what we first started doing is saying, what are our blue sky goals? For me, I had this vision of being able to clinically expand so that we could start getting in a lot more patients that would be of relevance and interest to our research programs as our second item. And I really wanted to integrate these clinical care and research programs so that we could do more human-based research. That would not only improve clinical care outcomes, but it would also help recruit and maintain faculty and trainees, because I'm sure other places have seen this, but we're starting to see a decline in the pipeline of physician scientists. And so how do we recruit those individuals in? And we do this by doing research that's more appealing and human-centered. We also wanted to improve our educational program. For me, somewhat selfishly, it was I wanted this educational program that would feed into generating more physician scientists, because that's central to my purpose and my commitments. But also thinking about how do we do this in a very strategic way that would enable success, and we needed sustainable funding for that. With reiteration with my faculty, it became very apparent that not only did they want good fellows and physician scientists, but they really wanted to start being, instead of internally facing education, do external facing education for patients and their families. So getting out into the community and increasing our community visibility. And then administrative support. I think this really fed into a lot of our wellness between the clinic and then the administrative support. When I came on as a faculty member in 2013, we had one administrative personnel in our division. By the time I came division head, it was up to 3, because we had had a lot of growth in the faculty. But for me to be able to continue to grow the faculty and enact these missions, I was going to need a better administrative team, and they needed to be supported and aligned, and we needed to streamline our processes. So I brought this vision to the group. And like I said, they helped me edit these goals. So I engaged, number 2, to become a passionate leader. I engaged with everyone. And then what I did is I empowered our teams. And I established associate division heads to help tackle each one of these. So I have 4 associate division heads, and they're essentially aligned with each of those 4 areas of the strategic plan. And they have my full support to put into play the action items that we had developed to execute this strategic plan. Now, the next thing is a bit of a culture change, at least for me and my division, in that we wanted to start focusing more on solutions and not problems. As I alluded to, there was a lot of stress and tension between the hospital system and the faculty doing clinical care. And a lot of times at faculty meetings, whenever change was talked about in these interactions, it really became a session where there was a lot of venting of frustrations. And not to say that that was bad, because I think we do have to air our frustrations, and there's a lot of satisfaction and relief in being able to do so, but it wasn't helpful in moving us forward. And so what we've started to do and have some culture change is to really focus it in on, these are solutions. And knowing what the problem is, these are our options for solutions, and focusing in on them and discussing those solutions and how are we going to move forward. And that's caused a lot of positive change, and and individuals are feeling much more optimistic about the future and these interactions, because we're really focused on those solutions and moving forward. And that leads into remaining positive. Again, always going to be challenges, but knowing that you're going to have successes, and even celebrate those small successes, and acknowledge that, yes, it's an inch forward, but it's still an inch forward and not backward. Be disruptive. This doesn't mean to blow up the place and completely change everything, but it means to be challenging the status quo and asking yourself, well, we've always done it this way, but why? Let's change it up, because the reason why isn't really a good reason. Just doing it for the sake of always having done it is not a great reason. And so be a little bit disruptive and be willing to change things. Be transparent and humble. So These can tie together quite well. And one of my objectives has been to be more transparent with the faculty, especially with the decisions being made and especially with the finances. One of the things that we wanted to do was to start to be transparent with how the inpatient call aligned with the clinical FTE that individuals had. And we put together this rubric that would more equitably calculate call based on clinical FTE. And when I put the rubric up and everybody's breakdown in faculty meeting, I realized that somebody's call was disproportionate and it was completely unfair. But I was transparent. I said, yep, this is not right and we're going to have to fix it. And so I had to be humble and say, we made an error, and also acknowledge that we're going to fix it and work together with that faculty member to be able to fix it. Maintain a high degree of self-awareness. I think this is going to feed into number 10, avoiding burnout, and realizing that you're not always going to be 100%. You're not always going to bring all of your strengths to the table, and understanding when you're not doing as well. How do you accommodate that? How do you make decisions? And some of the things that I've learned is that I don't have to fix a problem today, or I don't have to make a decision or take action today. I can wait a day or two. Sometimes I had one situation where it completely resolved itself because I was still reflecting and just not ready to make that decision. And it ended up resolving itself. Doesn't always happen that way, but I was very thankful when it did. But it also tells me too, when do I need to take a break? And vacations are becoming a lot more meaningful now, I will say. And then never stop learning. As I said, I have learned to lean in and ask questions and try to understand, especially areas where I have clear knowledge gaps. So I'll end the talk with this quote from Simon Sinek, who really wrote this book of, trying to find your why and your purpose and leading with purpose and passion. And I think we can all relate to this, that there are times in our life where we're really working hard, but it's not something we're invested in and it's stressful. But when you're working hard and you're doing something you love, it's passion. It's so much easier and it's a lot more fun. So with that, I thank everyone for their attention and happy to have a discussion or take questions.
All right. Thank you, Christy. That was inspiring. Let me see. So Dr. Donna Jeffrey is asking, I want to ask Dr. Kuhn about how her strength as a problem solver may not always be a strength.
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things I've learned, even, with my kids, as much as I've learned with working with my faculty, is that sometimes you're not being asked to solve a problem and you're really being asked to listen or to help guide somebody through the thought process to solve the problem themselves. And so really thinking when somebody's coming to you, and one of my defaults is somebody comes to me, I'm going to flip right into problem solver mode. Rather, I need to actually sit and listen and be more self-aware and use my emotional intelligence to identify, what is this person really asking? What are they coming to me for? Because they may not be coming to me to fix the problem. They may be coming to me just to let me be aware of it. It might be that they just need to say it out loud to reflect upon it themselves. Or they may be wanting me to help them think through and solve a problem themselves. And so I think that's where sometimes being a problem solver can get you into trouble if you're just jumping right to that mode.
All right. I see a couple of hands raised. Dr. Ghoshal? Would you want to ask the question? Or Dr. Bakchi?
Are they unmuted?
I don't know.
I would have to make them a panelist for them to unmute.
Do we want to have them
Okay.
just put their question in the chat then?
All right, so let's, while they're doing that, Dr. Fraser has a question. What was your biggest lesson learned from becoming chief?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I'm still learning this lesson is I am learning how to motivate a team of leaders, essentially. So I've worked with a lab group and I've worked on committees where we've all come with somewhat of a unified mission and vision. But working with a faculty is a little bit more challenging to guide them because we're all coming from different perspectives and different parts of this bigger mission. And so how do you engage the whole on a mission when they may only be committed to bits and pieces of it? And so I think that's kind of my biggest challenge in learning, you know, how do these parts become more than the sum of the whole?
That's great. Thanks so much, Kristine. That was a really terrific talk.
All right, there is a question from Dr. Chetta. Thinking about earlier in your career, how do you recommend balancing managing up and saying yes too much?
Yeah. I still struggle with saying no. And but
Doesn't go away.
right. But I think this is where having a good idea of what your purpose and mission are, because then even when you're earlier in your career and you're setting your sights on your goal and you kind of know what your purpose is, it helps you know if you're being asked to do something, you think, does this align with my purpose? Because if it aligns with your purpose, it's going to be a much easier task. If it doesn't, it's going to be hard and it's going to feel like it takes a lot more work. And those are the ones that you say no to, the things that don't align with your purpose. And I think, you know, when you're managing up and you're trying to say no to things and let the people above you know where your limits are, I think it's a lot easier to say, no, I don't see, you know, I don't want to do XYZ activity because one, I don't think that it's going to help really propel my career forward. But be open to having that discussion with the person because maybe they have a different reason and thinking of how that's going to propel you forward. And be open to listening to that. But then also, again, seeing, does it align? And if it doesn't align, I think those are the times where you start to say no. There is a great book that I read last summer called The No Club. And it's worth a read. I read it on an international flight, so it's a pretty quick read and it's a lot of fun. And it talks about when to say no, how to say no. And really, it comes back to this of whatever you're being asked to do, does it move you forward or is it just busy work? And if it's just busy work, I think that's a clear and easy no.
Okay, so this is a long comment. First of all, fantastic presentation. Number one, I struggle with the imposter syndrome, as do many others, I think. This is in part because I don't want to be the recipient of comments like, well, she got it because she's a woman. How do you navigate that? And two, can you share your slide? Especially appreciate your insight about the solve a problem because I share that too. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to share my slides. I think I sent them off to someone helping organize the event. So I'm happy to have those distributed. As far as dealing with the comments, yeah, again, I think this doesn't go away, the imposter syndrome. I even recognize that I felt imposter syndrome coming in front of this group because I look up to many of the people organizing this group and speaking today because I see them as leaders and still see myself as this junior training up and coming person and not necessarily one who's made it. As far as, how do I deal with that? I think it's those reflective exercises, honestly. Every time I go into my CV and start looking at what I've done, I'm like, oh my gosh, wow, I've done quite a bit. And that helps boost my confidence and knowing I can do this. Also, thinking about the things and challenges you've overcome in your past. And the fact that you've gotten through them means that you've got the grit, the perseverance, and the ability to adapt and learn to overcome again. Now, well, she got it because she's a woman. I worry about that sometimes. But again, I look at it and I say, I'm just as qualified as the next person to be doing this. And so that comes back to some of that confidence that I was talking about. You are where you are because you've got the skills and the qualifications.
Okay. From Sunny Lynn, is there one main takeaway you'd like to give to early career researchers just starting to build a team?
Yes. I think when you're building a team, especially when you're hiring, and I've learned this lesson a couple of times over, when you're hiring or taking on graduate students, postdocs, or even PRAs, you want to find people who are going to share your passion and share your vision, because if they're not, it's going to be a struggle. And so trying to really make sure that your team is aligned on the mission is just critical for your success and your sanity.
Okay. And then there's question about what do you say to mentees when they ask, how do you find your passion? To some, it's not very apparent.
Yeah, so I think that's where doing those exercises to think about your purpose is really critical. And so kind of thinking about who you are at your core and what is meaningful to you, what brings you value, what brings you joy. And once you can find that purpose, I think that allows you to see, oh, your passion aligns with that purpose. And so that's what I would recommend is it's some self-reflection. I think this is why one of the reasons I love being outside and active is because for me, that's the place where I can best be thoughtful and reflective on the things that matter most to me.
I think that is most of the question I see in the chat and Q&A. All right, Kristine, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was a joy.
And if anybody is interested in Kristine's actual sign, she will be here May 31st, and she will give a conference for our division, but it is open to anybody. It is fantastic work, so stay tuned. All right.